Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to HTML Basics. We'd like to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Ash, and we also have Hannah, who will take over the second part of the presentation, and Malin, who will demo the coding challenges. Before we get started, we wanted to go over some Zoom features. Your mic and video have been muted and turned off. You will be able to use the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, we do ask that you type it into the chat. As well, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Any inappropriate comments will result in immediate removal from this program. Before I get started, I just wanted to state that we are not experts in web development. This class is just covering the basics, and anything outside the scope of that will not be covered. A recording of this presentation will be posted to our YouTube page, which you can find on our website. Today, we are going to go over some of the basics of HTML. We'll start by going over the basic structure of a web page and defining what HTML is. We'll look at the software that's needed, along with the basic syntax of HTML. We'll also look at some of the basic elements used. We have our headings, paragraphs, lists, images, and links. Throughout the presentation, we will demonstrate what is being learned by using an online code editor. And at the very end, we'll have a greater in-depth coding challenge. Let's begin by looking at the basic structure of a web page. There are various types of websites, such as e-commerce sites, government sites, blogs, photo portfolios, etc. And while they all vary in purpose, the structure and foundation of web development is the same. When you look at the basic structure of a web page, you'll notice that there are 3 layers. You have your HTML, which provides the content. You have your CSS, which provides the presentation of the web page. And then you have your JavaScript, which covers how the web page behaves. Now that we have a basic understanding of the different layers of a web page, let's define what HTML is. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's used to create web pages and websites. HTML is not a programming language, however, it is a markup language. A markup language annotates a document to control the layout of the page. HTML tells the browser what is on the page, such as a heading, a paragraph, an image, a link, or a list. So HTML provides that structure. When an HTML document loads in a browser, the browser reads the document line by line, starting from the top of the document all the way down to the bottom. There are 2 things that you need to create an HTML document. You need a web browser to view your HTML and a text editor to create your HTML document. While traditionally, you would want to download an open source text editor for creating your HTML documents, as a beginner, you can play around with online code editors. These editors are built into the browser. They're very user-friendly and quick in getting you started. As an introduction, you can start out with an online editor such as Replit to test the waters, and then move on to an open source editor like Visual Studio Code that you would need to download. Alternatively, if you're using a Windows computer, you can use Notepad, and if on a Mac, you can use TextEdit. In this program, we're going to use Replit, which is an online code editor. HTML syntax consists of elements and tags. An HTML element is a component of an HTML document. It is the markup that you see to give meaning to the HTML document. There are several different types of elements, such as paragraphs and headings. You are able to nest most HTML elements. What this means is that an element can contain other elements. For example, you can nest a link or an anchor element within a paragraph element. Most HTML elements, not all, but most, are written with a start tag and an end tag. These tags are used to mark the start and end of an HTML element. To create the tags, you use a left angle bracket, the element name, and then a right angle bracket. This makes up the opening tag. Now a closing tag has a left angle bracket, a forward slash, the element name, and then a right angle bracket. Oftentimes, the word element and tag are used interchangeably to mean the same thing. However, the key difference is that tags are the opening and closing punctuation needed to create elements. Most elements contain the start tag, content, and the end tag, while other elements only contain an opening tag because all the information they need to convey is contained within the tag itself. Here's an example that illustrates the syntax of elements and the use of tags. This paragraph element uses an opening tag as well as a closing tag. As previously mentioned, there are several different types of elements. Let's look at our first element, headings. Headings range in size from 1 to 6 and are formatted as H1 all the way to an H6. While headings vary in text size, you don't use headings for their size. If you want to change the size of any text on a web page, you normally do it through CSS. You use headings based on the structure that they provide. Think of headings as subject headings. They outline a web page and have structural meaning. An H1 heading is considered a main or top-level heading. A web page can only have one H1 heading, and often you see it as the title of the web page. An H2 heading is a subsection of H1, and so on and so forth. So when using headings, it is best to use headings chronologically. You don't want to use an H2 heading without having first used an H1. You don't want to use an H5 heading without having used an H2 level heading before that. Here's a great example of how headings are used. This is a snapshot of the Plano Public Library's homepage. This is the code used to create this H1 level heading. While there's a lot of information in this H1 opening tag, I like to draw your attention to the basic opening tag, the content, and lastly, the closing tag. Our next element is the paragraph element. Paragraphs are used to split up text into different sections on a web page. It's a good method of controlling space. It's important to note that paragraphs can include text, images, forms, and links. You specify a paragraph element by using an opening tag and a closing tag. Here is an example of the paragraph element in use. This is another snapshot taken from the Plano Public Library's Business and Partnerships page. This is the code written to display this paragraph. I like to draw your attention to the opening tag, the content, which is that large paragraph in the middle, and then that closing tag at the very end. Now at this point in the presentation, I'll have Malin take over and present our first coding challenge.
Thank you, Ash. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And give me a minute. I do that. Okay, so can you all see my screen? I am currently on the CodePen homepage.
Yes, we sure can.
Excellent. Okay, so
Malin, you might be muted.
my apologies. Okay, so for our first coding challenge, we are going to recreate this portion of the Plano Public Library Teens homepage. We are going to recreate this top portion, and we will end at the arts end verse at this last line. So let's go ahead and walk through it together. We first looked at the use of headings and paragraphs. So right from the get-go, we see that we have a heading over here. this over here is a heading. We have 2 additional headings. And then over here, we have a paragraph, and a paragraph. So to practice this challenge, what you're going to be doing is just practicing using your H1 to H6 level headings and your paragraph element. Don't worry about the picture. We will look at images later on in the presentation. So we're just going to focus on the text that you see on the page, reading top to bottom. And again, we will end at that art and verse right at this point. So you'll get about 2 minutes to practice this. And what we're going to be using, you can use 2 different online code editors, and I'll show you the different layout of each, and you can select whichever you'd like to use. Alternatively, if you don't want to use an online code editor and you just want to keep it very simple, you can always grab a piece of paper and a pencil and just practice writing the syntax. So practice writing those opening and closing tags. So our first online code editor is called CodePen. What's great about this online code editor is you don't have to sign up for an account. It is free. You can start coding right away. The only downside about that is it won't let you save your work. It says you'll need to create an account. So this is CodePen. You have your pens at the top. These are boxes in which you write your code. And then at the very bottom is your output. So it displays what you're typing in. So if I were to create a paragraph, this is a paragraph. Whoops. You're going to see it. So you see that immediate result, which is really helpful. So you can use CodePen for our challenges today, or alternatively, you could use Replit. Replit is another online code editor. You do need to sign up for a Replit account. That is pretty quick to do, and it is also free. I'm going to go ahead and log into my account, and I'll show you what the layout looks like. So, so you can make a decision on which one you'd like to use. I find that Replit most resembles an code editor such as VS Code, and I'll show you why. So this is Replit. Once you sign up for an account, it'll take you to kind of like a home screen, and this plus symbol over here is where you will create your documents. And there are different languages that you can code in. For these classes, we are going to code in HTML, and then there's also CSS and JavaScript, and that just combines it together. And you can title your work. I'm just going to create, or the title will just be Web Dev Program 1, and I'll create this REPL. All right, so this is what it looks like. You have your, so this is your output, this is your input screen, this is where you're going to type all of your code. You also have a console. For the sake of this class, we are not going to be using the console. So there is a feature, it's the toggle developer tools. When you click on this, it looks like a wrench. When you click on that, it takes the console away. So that's what we're going to do. And then on this left-hand side, you have all of your files. So you have your index file, which is what we're going to be working out of. We'll also create additional files for other challenges, and I'll show you how to link those to your index. But you have a JavaScript file as well as a CSS file. So in this class, again, we're only going to focus on HTML. So what I'm going to do is just delete everything, the script tags. I'm going to delete all of this and just focus on what's in the body. Yeah, so you're going to write your code in here, and then when you hit run, you're going to see it appear in your output box. So having looked at both code editors, let's go ahead and jump into this challenge. You will get about 2 minutes to try and recreate this, snapshot of the Plano Public Library Teens page. So just focus on the H1 to level H6 heading tags. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 heading tags that you will need to create, along with 3 different paragraphs. So we'll give you about 2 minutes, and then we'll look at the challenge together, and I'll go through the challenge with you. All right, so your time starts now.
All right, we have about 5 seconds left. 2, 1, and end.
All right. If you didn't understand this challenge or didn't complete it, that is okay. I know 2 minutes flies by very quickly. Let's go ahead, and what we'll do is we are going to walk through this challenge together. So I'm going to switch over to my Replit screen. And what we're going to do is just create the HTML for that snapshot that we saw. So the first thing on the page was that upcoming programs teen tween heading. So to create that, I'm going to start off by typing that left angle bracket. And to me, that looked like an H1 heading, because it was kind of like, the main heading on the page. So I'm going to type in H1, and I'm going to close that bracket by typing that right angle. What's nice about Replit is it automatically creates that closing bracket, which is what you need. But it's good habit to just try and type that in yourself so you don't forget. So upcoming programs, teen, what is it, tween. Okay, now there's our level 1 heading. I'm going to hit run, and there you go. It kind of looks similar to that heading on the webpage, on the site. So let's continue on. And the next thing I see, let me switch back to it, is this heading, Crash Course in Comics Teen Tween. Now, in the chat, do you think this, you can give me the answer in the chat, do you think this is an H1 heading or possibly an H2 heading? If you think it's an H1, type H1. If you think it's an H2, type H2. I see quite a few H2s, which is correct. I think it would be an H2 heading. So let's go ahead. I'll jump back to my code editor, and I'll hit enter so I start on a different line, and I will create that opening and closing tag for that H2 heading. So the opening tag, you have that left angle bracket, H2, close that by typing the right angle bracket. And then the heading was Crash Course in Comics, teen tween. All right, if I hit the run, it'll show me what that H2 looks like. If I switch back to the site, it looks similar to it. I won't get too crazy about the different font and stuff. HTML is just about getting that text down. You can style it in CSS, so we're just focusing on the HTML. All right, and then after that, we have a paragraph. So to create a paragraph, again, you use the P element. So you have the opening and closing tags for your P element. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll just type in the sentence. So want to draw your own stories? Now you can with this course on how to make your own comic. There's this bit about tickets available 30 minutes prior to program, 1 per family, available in person only. All right, so there's a bit more about the location and time. Do you think this should be a different paragraph? Perhaps I'm going to go ahead and create a different paragraph for it. And let me go ahead and type in Haggard, Tuesday, June 7th, and that is at 3 p.m. Okay, so again, what's important about our heading and our paragraph tags, they all have that opening and closing. If I didn't have the closing tag for this sentence, do you think it would display? Let's give it a try. I'll hit run. And oh, interesting. It does display. Typically, it would not. If you are using a code editor such as VS Code, it would not display because you need that closing tag. So yeah, so that is just the first portion of that. We also have Intro to Watercolor, Art and Verse. If you didn't get around to finishing this challenge, we can go ahead and do it together. So I'll start off with another tag, a heading element. Do you think that Intro to Watercolor should be an H2? I think it should be an H2, so I'll create that opening and closing tag for the H2 level heading, and I'll type in Intro to Watercolor Teen. Okay, and then the next thing we see is a paragraph. So let's go ahead and type in our paragraph, learn basic watercolor techniques in a hands on learning session. And then we can hit run, and that pretty much runs the code. Are there any questions so far? Let's see. If you have a question, type it into the chat. If not, I can continue on. I'll create that art and verse heading and then another paragraph for the sake of time, and then we'll jump back into the presentation. If you wanted to save time, let's say you didn't want to type out the entire sentence in the paragraph, you could always use a placeholder text, and that is lorem ipsum. In these online code editors, it doesn't really work, but if you were using something like brackets or VS Code, if you were to type in like a P lorem ipsum and hit enter, that would then proceed to just type out a bunch of gibberish, just pretty much giving you a placeholder paragraph, not paragraph, placeholder sentences. So that way, let's say you wanted to create a blog, you didn't exactly know what you were going to type, you can use lorem ipsum to kind of show you the structure of what your paragraphs and sentences would look like.
Hey, Malin.
Yes.
One of our patrons did have to restart their computer. Would you?
Oh, sure.
Would it be possible for you to copy and paste that code and put it in chat? I don't know how
Sure.
formatting will work, but
Sure.
we just have some people that are looking to catch up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and copy from that H1 down to that paragraph, and I'll put it in the chat. And you should be able to copy and paste. So while you do that, I will go ahead and continue typing out the rest of this challenge. So we left off on that paragraph, learn basic watercolor techniques in a hands-on learning session. And there's something about tickets available 30 minutes prior to program, 1 per family, available in person only. Okay, so that's the end of that paragraph. Let's create another one. Again, you'll need that left angle bracket, the letter P, and a right angle bracket to create your opening tag. Replit goes ahead and it provides a closing tag for you, which is nice. I say get in the habit of deleting that and typing out your sentence, just so you don't forget to create a closing tag, or get in the habit of creating a closing tag as well. Don't rely on the that help. So where are we? Learn the basics. The library, where this is taking place at Schimmelfinnig, or took place, I should say, since it is a program that has passed. Saturday, June 11, 3 to 4:30 p.m. And of course, I need a closing tag. So that's a left angle bracket, a / the letter P, and then that right angle bracket. All right, and we go to a different line, and I see our last, our last heading, which is also going to be in H2, our last paragraph, or second last paragraph, because we'll use a paragraph element for this. Let me jump back into my code editor and create that H2 level heading for art and verse. All right, and then a paragraph, right? What you see and feel and turn art into poetry. Learn to look at art in a way that sparks curiosity and fuels creativity. My spelling's probably off. That's fine. Okay, perfect. So for the sake of time, I'm going to end here. If there are any additional questions, we will do our best to answer. Can't copy and paste. Okay, our apologies. Yes, we will definitely have the code ready for the next webinar, so that way you can, you'll access a Google document and you'll be able to copy and paste that into your code editor. For the sake of this class, do your best, and I will try and go slow. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you all, and we're going to jump in and learn about lists. So Ash and Hannah, take it away.
All righty, so lists are another important element in HTML. Lists are important because they help to group information together. Some examples of lists include the navigation bar of a website, a series of links to different resources, or a list of articles or content on your main web page. There are 3 different types of lists in HTML. We have definition lists, unordered lists, and ordered lists. Definition lists aren't commonly used unless you're grouping terms and descriptions, such as a glossary. In this presentation, we'll focus on unordered and ordered lists. There are 2 basic parts to lists. 1, the main tag that specifies what type of list it is, and 2, the individual list items. List items are nested within unordered and ordered lists. Nested elements means that one element is placed within another. This creates a type of relationship tree that is often referred to as the parent and child relationship. Let's take a look at unordered lists for further clarification. An unordered list is a type of list in HTML that is displayed by default as a vertical bulleted list. An unordered list is specified by using UL within opening and closing tags. But it's not enough to include the opening and closing tag. You have to further specify each individual item in your list. These items require their own opening and closing tags, and you specify these items by using LI, list item, within the tags. Here's an example of the format used when creating unordered lists. The input, the HTML you write, is on the left, and the output, or how it appears in the browser, is on the right. Notice how list items are contained within the opening and closing UL tags. This is what is referred to as a nested element, where the relationship between these two elements is clear. The UL is the parent element, and the LI is the child element. It's possible to nest several lists within lists, depending on the need. When you're trying to determine what type of list you should use, it's best to think about what meaning you are trying to convey by using the specific type of list. For example, does the sequence of the list items matter? If it doesn't, then maybe an unordered list is the best option. If the sequence does matter, then you may be better off using an ordered list. Here's an example of an unordered list in use. This is the code written to display this bulleted list. I'd like to draw your attention to the opening tag, each list item, and then that closing tag. An ordered list is a type of list in HTML that is displayed by default as a vertical numbered list. An ordered list is specified by using OL within opening and closing tags. Just like we saw with unordered lists, you need to specify each individual item within your list by using opening and closing tag. Here's an example of what the formatting looks like when you're creating an ordered list. The input, the HTML you write, is on the left side, and the output, what's displayed in the browser, is what is on the right-hand side. Here's a real-world example taken from the Plano Library Learns blog of how to make slime. This code was used to create the instructions displayed here. I'd like to draw your attention to the basic structure. You have your opening and closing tags for both the parent element, your ordered list, as well as the child element, your individual list items. We're going to pass it on to Malin for our next coding challenge.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and Hannah, if you could share your screen one more time on that slide for the coding challenge.
Sure.
We'll go ahead and we'll break down the slide and then we'll jump into it. I'll give you a few more minutes. I'll give you a few minutes to try and attempt the challenge yourself, and then we'll do it together. So with this challenge, I ended up taking out some pictures and other things from the webpage, and I just put together that the heading, some paragraphs, and 2 more additional headings, and then the 2 different types of lists. This is again just to get you to be able to use your H1 to H6 level headings, to use your paragraph element, to use your ordered and unordered list elements. So we see an H1 over here, and then again we see some paragraphs, we see another heading, we see would you say this is an ordered or an unordered list? In the chat, type OL for ordered list or UL for unordered list. Correct. This is an unordered list. An unordered list, again, by default, displays as a bulleted list, whereas an ordered list displays as a numbered list. So To show you the code for it, I am going to share my screen, and then I'll show you share. Okay, so here is my, this is Replit. There's also CodePen. I'll type in CodePen for this demo and then switch back to Replit just so you can see the difference. So when we're creating a list, you need a set of opening and closing brackets. So OL for ordered list. I'll create the closing bracket for that. So that's just a left angle bracket, OL, right angle bracket. And for a closing tag, it's that left angle bracket, a / OL, and that right angle bracket. And remember, when you're creating a list, each item in your list has its own set of opening and closing tags, and we reference those as list items. So you need a left angle bracket, letter LI, a right angle bracket for that opening list item tag. And then I'm going to go ahead and, just to get into good practice, create the closing tag for it so I don't forget. You have that left angle bracket / LI right angle bracket. And our list item could be OL, ordered list. So I'll create that first one, grab a mixing bowl, or yeah, grab a mixing, I think that was supposed to be bowl, or resealable bag, and gather supplies. All right, so that's step 1 shows. Perfect. So now what I want you all to do is recreate, it's that heading, Steam Connections, slime time. For the sake of time, you can just recreate this first sentence. We're getting sticky with this science project, making glittery and fluffy slime. And then we're going to jump down and create a supplies list, and then jump down and create an instructions list. So I will leave this page up. I will give you 2 minutes and try your best. If you don't get it, that is okay. We will work on the coding challenge together. And then again, we'll have all of the code for these challenges ready to go for you for next week. So you can play around with that.
Hey, Malin.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you want me to put the timer on for this challenge?
I say 2 minutes. It might not be enough time. That is okay. Again, for the sake of the program, we'll give it 2 minutes because we'll go ahead and we will go ahead and code it together. So
Okay,
if you,
sounds good.
yeah, if you can do it in 2 minutes, yay. If you can't, that is okay. Just practice getting your heading, paragraph, unordered, and ordered lists. All right.
And the time is up.
Excellent. Okay. If you were able to complete the challenge, you can type in the letter B for a thumbs up. If not, that is okay. We'll go ahead and we'll code this together. So if you didn't complete, don't worry, that's okay. We're all beginners here. We're all learning. So yeah, we'll sit back and just we'll do this code together. And if you're handwriting it, that's great too. I say that's a great way to learn how to just get the mechanics of it. And then when you're wanting to hop onto an online code editor or download a code editor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually switch to the Replit site. I want to show you how to create a different file in Replit, an additional file. I don't want to erase all of this code. I just want to create a new file. So up here on the left-hand side, there's a button that has add file. You'll select that. I'm going to label this as challenge2.html. And then I'm going to create I'll create the code for that second challenge here. So if we're going to start by creating that H1 heading. Oops, I'm not sure what I did. All right. So that H1 heading is that opening and closing tag for the H1. So left angle bracket, H1, right angle bracket. And then the heading was Steam connections slime time. Okay, so I'm going to hit run and let's see what happens. I hit run, nothing happened. I'm still seeing the code from the index file.
Hey, Malin.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. So,
Sure.
with some of these coding software and online coding software tools,
Mm-hmm.
they have either the skeleton code or I believe it's called the boilerplate
Yes.
already built in. So is that by default on Replit?
So on Replit, I don't know if it's by default. I know CodePen has it built in, so you don't have to have this boilerplate. It is a confusing term. We are going to look at this towards the end of the presentation, but essentially when you're creating a HTML document, you have to include all of this code because it tells the browser what type of code it's receiving, and it gives it some metadata information, and then what gets displayed in your browser is actually everything that's between this opening and closing body tag. So with Replit, it does, I think it might require it. We can give it a try. Let's see, I'm going to delete that and see if this runs. Well, this isn't running for a different reason, but if we were to do that in that index, if I were to delete all of that and hit run, okay, it still shows it. So it seems to be built into it. But again, for me, for habit, when I'm using these online code editors, I will use the boilerplate. With CodePen, it'll tell you you don't need to use it. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
So far, I will keep you posted if they have a follow-up. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. So back to my challenge2.html document. I hit run and it's not displaying. And this is specifically for Replit. The reason is with Replit, I believe everything runs out of that index.html document. So if you are using Replit, what you'll need to do is you'll need to create a link to your second document. So you'll need to create an anchor element. We haven't covered that yet. That's something that we'll cover in a few more slides, but I'll demonstrate what that looks like. An anchor element means you are creating a link. Now, when you're creating links in your web page, you can link to other documents, you can link to other web pages outside of your site, or you can link to web pages within your site. And to create that, you type left angle bracket, the letter A for anchor, space, and you type in href. href stands for hyperreference, and then you'll type the equal sign and a set of quotation marks. So an opening quotation and a closing quotation. And what that does is it creates a hyperreference, meaning you're going to have to insert the file name or not the file name, you're going to need to insert the address for where you can find your the link. So what was nice is that I saw challenge 2 in a drop-down menu. So I will create that. And then, so anchor element has a opening and closing tag. So I'm going to type in challenge 2 and then create the closing tag, which is that left angle bracket, a / an A, and then that closing right angle bracket. When I hit run here, it creates this text as a link. So if I select that, then it'll actually take me to my second document, which is that challenge 2. I think this is unique to Replit. I'm not entirely sure, but that is how it's done. So if you are using Replit and you would like to use different documents or files instead of just erasing everything or building onto your index file, I say go ahead and do that. Remember to create that second link to your second file. To create a link to your second file, you'll need to create an anchor link, I guess you can call it. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my challenge2.html so we can create, where is it? We'll create that heading. I'm going to create that first sentence. I'll skip down to the supplies and the instructions. So we've got our H1 heading. I'll begin a paragraph using opening and closing P tags. So left angle bracket, the letter P, right angle bracket, and it automatically creates the closing tags for me. So the sentence was, we're getting sticky with this science project, making glittery and fluffy slime. All right, now I'm going to hit run. Oh, it doesn't. It runs the index. I have that link. Let me click on the link and see what it looks like. Perfect. So I have my heading, my paragraph, and I'm going to jump down to that supplies heading, which was right over here. Do you think that's an H2 heading? I think that might be an H2 heading. So H2, oops, I got the caps on. H2, got my opening and closing tag, and it was titled supplies. Okay, now let's practice our unordered list. So we need that UL, and then each item in that list will be a list item. So again, you have your closing UL, or excuse me, your opening unordered list tag, your closing unordered list tag, your opening list item, and your closing list item tag. So saline solution, contact lens solution, we need another list item. And we need some glue. So we need a list item. What else? We've got baking soda. Opening. So our opening tag is always that left angle bracket. The element, so LI list item, or excuse me, it's lists. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm getting all tripped up. So we have our opening list item tag, our closing list item tag, and mixing bowl. For the sake of this presentation, I'm not going to complete the items in the list. I'll go ahead and jump down to the instructions because I really just want to show you how to create the different lists.
Hey, Malin, real quick.
Yes, sure.
What would be a possible cause of this this second coding challenge? What would be a possible cause of it not running? Is there some closing tag that we need for this second challenge to run?
For what portion is not running?
This patron just described that their second
Oh, okay.
run, it's only the index.
Index, yeah. So a fix for that is to go to the index, and you'll need to create, I'll type it in the chat. It's an anchor, which just means it's a link.
We have
And it's gonna go in here. So what you need to create is an anchor element, so a link element. It's that left angle bracket, the letter A, space, the word href equals opening quotation, your file name. When you type in, let's say you named your file challenge, sometimes a drop-down menu will appear of all the files you have in your project, and then that closing quotation, and then the closing right angle bracket for that opening tag. And then you'll type in your file and then that closing tag for the anchor. For some reason, that's how Replit works. You need to create a link to your second document. So when you go to your second document and you hit run, you're only seeing that first index. But when you hit that file or whatever is hyperlinked, when you select that, that should show you your second document. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answered that question.
I will keep you posted if they
Okay.
send a follow-up.
Okay. All right. Let's jump back into that challenge. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to create the heading and then the first two tags, or excuse me, the first two list items in the instructions. So the heading was supplies. I'll create that as another H2, supplies. And then I'll create that ordered list, so OL, and then LI for each list item. Oops, LI. Okay, so you have your OL, OL, LI, LI. And our first item was our first instruction. Oh, I typed in supplies. Let me correct that. That should be instructions. Okay, so step one, grab a mixing bowl or resealable bag. Oops. And gather supplies. Step two is to measure out 4 tablespoons, which is a 1/4 cup of glue, into your container. Now I'm going to hit run. And again, with Replit, it'll show you the index file. But since I've linked to this file, I'll click that hyperlink and it should show me my code. So we have that H1, a paragraph, H2, supply list as an unordered list, H2, instructions as an ordered list. Are there any questions before we jump back into the presentation?
None that I see. It's okay if you're not done with this challenge. We will definitely find a way to get the code to y'all during the next webinar to where you can copy and paste it just to play catch up. But just sit back and observe if you find that you're not quite there yet. We are more than happy to figure that out for you later.
Yeah, if you're not done, I say that that's okay. When this program is over, go ahead and try and do those challenges. I will drop the link for each of the web pages that we're looking at. We looked at the teen webpage for the public library. We looked at the STEAM Connections webpage. I'll drop that in the chat. And we're also going to look at the STEAM page as well. Or excuse me, we looked at the, we're looking at the STEAM page, the how to make slime, and then we're just going to look at the STEAM homepage. So you have the 3 links. Try and practice that on your own. And then if you have questions, you can always feel free to type it into the chat, or we can answer questions in the next program as well. We'll do our best to get to all questions today. All right, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to y'all. We are going to look at images next. And yeah, so let's take a look at how to create images.
Alrighty, so the next element we are going to look at is the image element. If you're trying to display any sort of image on a web page, you would often use an image tag, which is abbreviated as IMG. An image element is an empty element, meaning it is self-contained and does not have to have a closing tag. Rather, it's just one opening tag. All the information needed is within the opening tag. In HTML, there are these things called attributes. Attributes are often used as a way to communicate more information, or they're used as a way to single out a specific element so that it can be styled a certain way in CSS and JavaScript. When it comes to images, there are 2 key attributes that are used. The first is the source attribute, which is abbreviated as SRC. Source tells the browser where the image can be located when it's loading the page. So it points to the direct file path of the image. While the source of the image can point to the file on your computer, it can also point to files and images that are on the web. Alt is another attribute that is important to images. It stands for alternative text, and it contains a description of the image. Alt is incredibly important for accessibility, as the alt attribute provides screen readers with information about the picture itself. Here's an example of the image element in use. This snapshot is from the Genealogy Center webpage. This code was used to display this image. Notice there aren't any closing tags. All of the information needed for this image is within the angle brackets. It also contains the source attribute, or SRC attribute, that points to the source of the image, along with an alt attribute that provides a brief description of the image itself. Another important element that we are going to look at today is the anchor element. The anchor element is used to add links to your web page. For example, you can link from a page on your site to another page on your site, or you can link from your site to another site altogether. In HTML, anchor elements are specified by using opening and closing tags. They contain a key attribute called href. Href stands for hypertext reference, and it's an important attribute because it tells your browser what site or page it needs to go to. The format for links is as follows. Opening tag with your left angle bracket, the letter A, your href with an equal sign, followed by quotation marks. In between the quotation marks, you'll insert your link and then follow it with a right angle bracket. The content or text that you'd like to hyperlink is sandwiched in between the opening anchor tag and the closing anchor tag. Here's an example of the anchor tag in use. This snapshot was taken from Plano Public Library's Money Smart webpage. Notice the link at the end of the paragraph. On the right, you'll find the anchor tag that relates to this sentence. I'd like to draw your attention to each opening and closing angle brackets, along with the content in between. The content is what becomes hyperlinked. Alrighty, Malin, we are going to pass it to you.
Perfect. So in this coding challenge, Hannah, would you be able to share your screen again for that slide?
Absolutely.
Thank you. In the coding challenge, we're going to try and recreate this. This is a snapshot taken from that our teen page. So we'll have our H1 heading. This is possibly another heading, so maybe a H2, a paragraph. You have some more headings and unordered lists. This image will actually come after your H1. And in CSS is how you would display it on the left of your paragraph and that unordered list. But for the sake of this class, we're just going to focus on the heading, then create an image, and then another heading, a paragraph, and some more headings, and unordered list. Now, if you don't have an image already saved, which I don't, I'm going to use a placeholder image, and I dropped a link in the chat for that. A placeholder image is pretty much what it sounds like. It's an image that you use if you don't already have one in your files to use for your site. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we can jump into that together. I'm going to share our first. Okay, so we'll jump in this together. I'm going to create a different file, but let me go back to the site. I'm going to scroll down. Okay, so as a refresher, this is what we are going to code. I'm going to jump into Replit. I'm going to create another file. I'll label this, I think this is our third challenge.html. I'm going to go back to my index and create a link for it. Otherwise, it will not show up. So again, how do you create a link? You have that left angle bracket, a space, href, opening quotation, closing quotation marks, in between that, your file name. This is specific to Replit. If you're using CodePen, you don't have to worry about this. And this will be, I'll title this image, and then that closing tag. Okay, I'll jump into my third file, hit run. Okay, so for our challenge, we'll just code this together. We need that heading, so H1, opening, closing, job, seekers, toolkit. Okay, let's create an H2. This is adult teen. And then we're going to create a paragraph from finding the right opportunity to crafting your resume. Job searching can be complicated. Learn how to break down the steps of your job search and find tools to get started with these 4 virtual sessions. Then participate in related workshops to build your skills and receive feedback from hiring professionals. All right. So having looked at this, I realized, let me jump back into my site. I forgot my image. The image, I'm going to squeeze that in between the H1 and H2. So let's create that image tag. Left angle bracket, img space src equals opening quotation, closing quotation. I don't have an image. I'm going to pull one off of placeimg.com. I typed that into the chat. You can select what kind of placeholder image you would like. I'm going to select tech. And what's nice, it gives you the code to use. So I'll hit copy. I'll jump back into my text editor, and in between the quotation marks, I will type or I will paste that code. And I can't forget the other attribute, which is alt. And this will just be placeholder image. We can change this. You can change it later on. So that image, the image element only contains one tag. It doesn't have a closing tag because all of the information you need is in the tag itself. So let's see if that works. I'm going to hit run. Again, with Replit, it'll show you the index, but I have a link to image. And there you go. So you have an image. If you want to play around with the size of the image, you can. And that's just from that, the link that you got from the site. If you type in, let's say, 200 by 400 or 480, what will that look like? Okay, that's not really what we were going for. I'll do 200 again. Image. Okay, that works. And you can play around with the size of the image as well from placeimage.com. So let me jump back into Replit, and we are going to create our unordered list. So after this paragraph, it looks like we have a few more headings and our lists. And these, the word register is it's linked, so it'll take you to the registration page. For the sake of this class, we are just going to demo the link, just link back to the library website. So let's create another, perhaps an H3. Virtual sessions, and it'll be Tuesdays. Oops. Perhaps another H3. Tuesdays, 3 p.m. And I'm going to, for the sake of time, just demo one link. So it was an unordered list, which means I need a list item with that date, August 9th, professional documents. And then the word register was hyperlinked. How do we create that link? Through the anchor element. So href equals, and I'm going to pull this web address and paste it into that. So I have my opening left angle bracket, the letter A, space href, the full web address with the HTTPS, and then that closing right angle bracket. And then after the word register, I need to create the closing anchor tag. So that's a left angle bracket / a right angle bracket. I'm going to hit run and see what happens. And if I were to click this, sure enough, it takes us back to our teen page. So that is how you create an image and a link. And are there any questions before we jump into the back into the presentation?
I just wanted to go over, because I was trying to answer this in chat, but so for people who the image code isn't working, I know one common error that I make is that I either don't put the equal sign or I don't include the quotation marks. Those are two super easy things to miss. Or that little end bracket. Are there any other common issues you can think of, Malin, that maybe prevent an image code from displaying?
I would definitely say the source of the image, so that file path. If you are off by a / or whatever it is, it will not display. So making sure your file path is correct. And then, like you said, the quotation marks and yeah. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, I will keep you posted if there is a follow-up question, but I guess we're ready to get back into the presentation.
Yes, let's jump back into it.
Right. Alrighty. This one. So let's summarize what we've learned so far. Headings are similar to subject headings, and they range in size from H1 to H6. Here's the syntax of a heading element. It contains an opening and closing tag. Paragraphs allow you to split up and structure your text. This element also contains an opening and closing tag. The image element lets you embed images into your web page. You only need one tag, and you need to include the source attribute, which points to where your image is located. So either on your machine or online. And you also need an alternative text attribute, which helps text readers describe your image. The last element we looked at is the anchor element. This element lets you embed links into your web page. It too is a self-contained element, which means that you only need one tag. You need to include an href, hypertext reference, attribute, which points to the link you want to use. The anchor element has an opening and closing tag. When writing HTML, we learned that there is a basic structure that includes a series of elements and tags. Some elements have opening and closing tags, such as paragraph elements, and others do not, such as the image element. We've also learned of semantic elements to help us break down our web pages into different groupings. Let's take it a bit further by looking at the standard structure of an HTML document. When you create an HTML document using a text editor, there's a standard skeleton that you must adhere to. This is an example of what a basic HTML document looks like. It includes all of the main components needed for your browser to display the web page properly. Let's go through each line, defining the elements and why they're important. This is an example of a basic boilerplate. The first line contains a declaration element. Doc type tells the browser what kind of code it is receiving, which it'll then display. The second line contains the HTML element. HTML is a root element, meaning all of your code needs to be written in between the HTML opening and closing tags. The third line contains the head element. This element is not to be confused with the heading element we looked at earlier. Within the opening and closing tags of the head element, you'll find all of the important information about the web page. This information doesn't show up on the web page, rather it's information about the page. The next two lines contain the meta elements, which contain more metadata about the page, such as character set and style descriptions. Title is an element that specifies the title for the document. It doesn't appear on the web page, but it is seen in search engine results and browser tabs. The link element is an element that links to a separate document, such as a CSS document or a Google font document. It is not to be confused with the anchor element. The link element doesn't contain a closing tag, and it's an empty element. Its sole purpose is to link to other documents, whereas the anchor element we looked at earlier contains content within its opening and closing tags. Lastly, we have our body element. This is where you write your content, such as the headings, paragraphs, lists, images, and anchor elements. Everything within the body is displayed in the browser. So it's what people see when they land on a web page or a website. I'm going to pass it back to Malin for our next exercise.
So our last coding challenge, Hannah, I'll have you stay on this slide, and then I'll share my screen and we'll code this together. What we're going to do is we are going to try and create this navigation bar, just the HTML for it, and then this first column. So what we'll do is we'll create an image and then an unordered list using list items for residents, business, library, play, public safety, government, and departments. This looks like an image, so we'll create an image in that list item, and then we'll create this first column. So we'll use our H1 and then create another image, and then an H2, a paragraph, and this looks like an unordered list that might be linked. So let's try to do that. I know there's about 10 more minutes left. If you don't get far in this challenge, that is okay. We are going to, we'll provide the code in the second class for this first class and for the second class. So you can catch up and play around with it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so I am going to continue to use Replit. So I'm going to create another file, and this will be challenge4.html. I'll go back to my index, and as we know with Replit, you need to link to your file. So a href equals challenge4, and then I need to create that closing tag. Okay, if I run this, it should. Final challenge, perfect. So it's linked. Let me hop into my challenge4 file. And just as a reminder of what we're doing, we're going to code this and then this first column. So we have got, it looks like we have we've got an image first. Whoops. Okay, so I need to create all of my code in between the body tags. So we're going to start off with an image. Image source. I don't have an image, so I'm just going to use a placeholder image. Jump back into that. All right, and then an alt. So this is supposed to tell us what our image is. I'm going to type in placeholder logo. Okay, and I can't forget that right angle bracket. And then we've got our unordered list. Navigation bars are usually unordered lists that are styled to on a horizontal level, because typically your ordered list or your unordered list, it displays by default as a vertical level, but using CSS you can have it display horizontally. So this is going to display vertically. So we have residents. We're going to come down and create another list. Business. I'm actually just going to copy this for the sake of time, paste. We have library, paste, play. Oops, did not spell that correctly. And then we have public safety. It looks like we have government. and then one more departments. And there's a logo that looks like a stacked this thing here. I'm going to wrap this list item. Do you think that image should come before or after? If you think before, you can type that into the chat. If you think after, you can type that into the chat as well. I'm going to try before and see what happens. Actually, let's try after. Image source equals, I'm going to use the same placeholder. Oops, I need to get a placeholder link. So I'll hop back into here, copy this. And then alt, placeholder, image, and then make sure I close that. Let me hit run and see what it looks like. Final challenge. Okay, it looks really weird, but that's okay. We're having fun with this and we're just pretty much learning the basics of it. So we have created our navigation list. Now let's jump in and create that H1, an image, and this text right here. So we have an H1, Steam. Looks like we have an image. I'm going to use the same image that I used earlier, an alt, placeholder, image. When you actually have an image, you want to be descriptive when you're filling in that alt portion. You're not going to want to label it placeholder image, because if your website ever breaks down, like if the image link isn't working, a screen reader will be able to say this is the placeholder, or it'll read this alt wording, I guess you could say. So we have our source image. What are we doing? We need to create another heading. Let's create an H2, Steam kits, and then I'm just going to create the first sentence of that. So a paragraph, Plano Library promotes innovative literacy for all ages. Okay. Oh, I'm doing something wrong, aren't I? Let's try it. Final image. Everything is, yeah, I have the unordered list closing tag down here when really it should be after this list item. Let's run that again. Okay, that's better. Let's create this first anchor, and then for the sake of time, it looks like we're coming up on the end. We'll jump back into the presentation. So for that first anchor, you need to, oh, I'm calling it an anchor. It's actually a list item that is also an anchor. So there's two things that we first need to do. First, we need to create the unordered list opening and closing tag. And then we need to create the list item. And it says preschool, PDF. And our anchor is going to come after this opening tag. So href equals, I'm going to link back to the teen web page. Oh, actually, it's a Steam. I'm going to link back to the Steam web page. And paste. Okay, so I have my opening anchor tag. After that PDF is where I'm going to insert that closing anchor tag. And I'm going to hit run. Final challenge, scroll down, and PDF is hyperlinked. And it takes me to our webpage. So that is, that's going to be that for our for this challenge. Are there any questions? I know that was pretty quick. That went pretty quickly. Yeah, as far as the code goes, don't worry about saving it. We are going to have this code ready for you for the next class and have that class's code as well for the next session. We do have some resources we'd like to share if you'd like to learn more. I'm going to hand it over to Hannah and she'll go through some of the resources. Hannah, would you like to?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Alrighty, so there are many more text editors that you can use. I've mentioned Visual Studio Code, but there's also brackets. You also have your online editors like Replit and CodePen.io. Feel free to explore all of these and see which you like best. Some resources I'd like to highlight include the Mozilla Developer Network and LinkedIn Learning, where you can find more information on HTML. MDN contains a lot of information such as resource guides and tutorials on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. LinkedIn Learning has several classes on web development, one of which I recommend is the HTML Basics Essential Training by Jen Simmons. Google Librarian is another great resource you can use. You can find the form on our site, planolibrary.org, under our About section, titled Help from a Librarian. Be sure to check out Plano Library Speaks podcast to learn more about your Plano libraries and our staff. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for taking time to attend our virtual program. You can find more resources on our website, planolibrary.org, as well as our blog, planolibrarylearns.org. Are there any final questions before we end our presentation?
As a reminder, this presentation will be up on our YouTube page. We're also going to provide the code. Moving forward, we'll provide the code for all of the challenges, and that will most likely be done as a Google Doc, so you'll have access to that. And then something else I wanted to show you before we leave, it's a really cool feature in Google Chrome. It's the developer tools. I'm going to share my screen. If you are ever wanting to know what the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of a website is, you can always go into your browser. I'm using Google Chrome. There are these 3 stacked dots in the top right-hand side. If you select that and you scroll down to More Tools, and then you scroll down to Developer Tools, that'll actually pull up the HTML, the CSS. It'll pull up the code for the site itself. If you select this icon, select an element in the page to inspect, you select that, you can hover over each element there is, and it tells you what the HTML is. If I click public safety, it shows me the anchor because, of course, public safety is something that you can click on and it'll take you to additional pages. So yeah, this over here, upcoming entrepreneurship program teens, it tells you it's an H1 and it tells you the color and all the code used for it. If you scroll over that, that's an H2, that tells you it's a paragraph. So there's a lot you can learn from playing around with these developer tools. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you all. For the next session, we are going to cover tables and forms. So hopefully you'll join us for that. All right, that concludes our program. Thank you all again for joining us. If you have any additional questions, we'll do our best to answer them. If not, we will see you all next week.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.